Take it away, Marv.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and now all of my guests are going to introduce each other themselves. So they're not going to introduce each other. Marv, you're already messing up. So first of all, Max.
Hi, I'm Max Sycamore. I am with the Bitches with Beards podcast. We are just two professional homosexuals who like to drink wine and discuss culture.
Cam.
I am Cam Soley from the Decked Up Review Show, and we discuss everything pop culture, social topics, politics, and other hot takes.
And Cam on his picture is advertising another show that isn't his show. His show is being advertised by the chap from the TechMobility pod, Ken.
Ken Chester.
Yeah, I'm Ken Chester, and I'm with TechMobility Show. We talk about transportation and mobility, technology, and pretty much whatever I want to talk about. I have a wide berth and proud of it, and occasionally go into the weeds with no apologies.
Yeah.
Cool. And Doc?
Well, my name's Heath, and I run the TherapyBites Art Lab podcast. We talk about all things psychology and just share out some psychological tidbits that we think are nutritious for healthy living. And I'm just going to be running the cameras today and enjoying this conversation with all these wonderful guys that are top-notch in AI and the ways that it's helping lives and how we can keep it from ruining lives, I suppose.
Yep. I'm glad you're the cameraman and not the fluffer.
And Graeme.
No, you did not go there.
I did.
Shots fired.
Okay.
Everyone's thinking it.
Yep.
and Graeme?
My mind.
Hi, Graeme, founder of Klassic Studios. We produce a range of AI-powered podcasts, the flagship being the Daily Dad Jokes podcast.
We love dad jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
doesn't everybody?
I legit do.
They're timeless.
That's my heroes.
I know.
They are.
Generation to generation, for sure.
I'd rather a boo than applause.
Okay.
I'm
going to give him applause. I listen to his shows all the time. He knows that.
He's good.
Everybody knows that. Because
I applaud anyone who can lead a family through peril.
Hey, there you go. Years of experience. Gentlemen, so here's the question. AI, yes or no? Let's keep it easy.
Nay.
What do you think, Max?
Yay, nay. I think it
Dude, no, man. No.
You can't do both. You have to pick one.
on.
Okay.
Explain yourself.
I would say there are definite benefits. For the most part, nay. But I do see benefits at some level. But I would be, if you're going to say yay or nay, I'll say nay.
Okay. How come?
I think that until we understand the effect it's going to have on culture and the people that are part of that and building into that, then there needs to be regulation. But I think at the moment it's prime for abuse, and I think that's evident at the moment when you look at all the strikes. So, yeah, that's my nay. Is that I think they need to work out what they're doing with it.
Mm-hmm. Marv, what about you?
I'm sort of along similar lines to Max because, like I was saying on the chat that we've all had, on Twitter, the personal chat that we've all had between us before now, I think it's a double-edged sword. It's a bit like a lot of things, technology and, internet and all these things. There's bad sides to these things and there's good sides to them. But it needs to be looked at because the bad side to it is, like the porn industry and things like that. Yeah. And the way that it's being used by some film studios to save them a few pennies. Well, more than a few pennies, but to save them.
It's very much like the SOPA bill, where the idea was nice, regulate the internet, stop people from stealing stuff. But the agenda behind it was, we want to just make it hard to access private information. We want to sell your stuff and data. No, it's very true. It's pretty much, it's like any political or district attorney election where you just say, okay, here's what they're running on, but is that what's backed up according to all the research about them?
Graeme, why don't you weigh in on this?
So I would be a yes for this for AI.
Oh.
I think I think in long sort of cycles. I mean, this is just another technological wave coming through. I mean, if you think down, right back to typesetters, getting replaced, and you're looking at even just in print media, that's getting replaced. And now I think this latest tool, and I think it is a tool, is only going to be a net benefit, right? Doesn't mean there's no costs. It doesn't mean there's no potential downsides, but I think it's going to be a net benefit. What I'd like to see is a lot more discussions like what we're having now to explore what are the downsides, what are the upsides, more on a philosophical level, on a human level, because in general, I think humans as a population will do the right thing, right? That's my, I guess, my positive bent on all this, and I base that just looking at history of technological advances. So that's basically my summation of what I think about AI.
Well, let's turn to the doctor. Dr. Heath, you weigh in here?
Well, I think I'm on board with Graeme because if you look back at human history, at technological developments, it really is in the hands of humans to do healthy things with scary things. And I've heard AI compared with nuclear weapons, and certainly that's the scariest invention of our time.
Yeah.
And we've had plenty of edge of the seat events, back to the days of JFK, and then all kinds of things behind the scenes. But I'm a very big believer in the human race, and I think that if we put the best minds and our best feet forward, I'm a go for AI. I'm a go for regulating AI. But you could even call into the picture automobiles. I mean, how many people have died from automobiles? Do we want to get rid of automobiles because people can have wrecks and do stupid things with automobiles? I think that AI is going to be similar. Cell phones are similar. Now we have cell phones and automobiles, and just right down the road, a guy was killed, and people are killed often because the technology is being misused. You're using cell phones while driving an automobile. And in my state, we need more regulation with that. But I just have faith in the human race. I think it is inevitable. And so instead of trying to swim upstream and unring the bell, well, at this point, it doesn't matter. The bell's been rung. AI's here. What are you going to do? You can't sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. Let me weigh in here. I want to give you all some things to think about. And I'm going to come at it pretty much from the financial standpoint. In a magazine called Radio World, it announced a company called Futuri Media, who developed a form of AI called Radio GPT. And they were working with one of the top radio chains in America to beta test it. So here's what happened. That particular company did take one of their hosts and go live with their AI version of her, sounded like her, interacted like her, in doing my research on Radio GPT. And they talked about being able to deliver a bot that could be any one of 100 voices, including existing live talent that you have on the radio, number one, can pick up and respond to community-specific data points, up to 250,000 data points, and can do all of this stuff in real time. Now, I can tell you, at least here in America, with respect to iHeart, Cumulus, Alpha Media, and Town Square Media, which are the top 4 radio companies in the country, and one of those companies is using it. 2 of those companies have gone through Chapter 11 already, bankruptcy. And I can tell you what they're going to do is they're going to cut staff even more. So I end all this. My point is very simple. And I ask a question to you for consideration. Do you own your likeness? Do you own your voice? Do you own your brand? And at what point don't you? Or do you? Or how do you protect that and have either some other firm or the firm you work for basically said, thank you very much for your contribution. We've taken the last 3 years of your voice, likeness, interaction, everything, fed it into a large language model, and we don't need you.
Yeah.
It's like Carrie Fisher always said, every time she looks in the mirror, she owes George Lucas money. And
Well,
and it is about compensation.
there with that you just said, Max. I mean, you know, there was that deal made, wasn't there, with James Earl Jones, where Lucasfilm now they've made a deal with him so they can use his voice in the future. You know, and then they just pay his estate for the use of his voice, essentially, as Darth Vader.
They use it now. But Obi-Wan only used a AI version of James L. Jones' voice. He wasn't actually involved in the recording of it.
Yeah,
and he got paid for that.
Yeah, which is important. It's all about like For me, it's compensation. So I was listening to doing some research today. I'm a huge Power Rangers fan from back in the day, and the guy that played Zordon, the head, was literally paid for 2 hours of work. He came in, they filmed him with green around him, and he moved his mouth and went, oh, oh, oh. Then they blurred it enough, so they just had to use a voiceover actor. But they used that Zordon for 5 seasons and a theatrical movie. And you're like, he wasn't paid for that. And that's really, and I get, that's my issues that, like, people can be lured into giving their face over and thinking it'll be like, oh, it's a one-off pilot. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, they're on the big screen and they're like,
all this money they're owed.
Yeah.
Well, but they made that choice. I think that you have to be wise when you're doing things like that and read the fine print, read the contract, insist on the contract. Do you guys know a guy? I think his name is Stan Lieberman.
Yep.
I know.
Yeah, I know him.
Otherwise known as the creator of Spider-Man, and Stan Lee. And so, guys like Lieberman didn't get in print back in the day. But the problem was that Marvel and those iterations of that company that owned his whatever contract he had, he battled that in courts for years. I don't really see a difference between what Stan Lee went through in the mega billion-dollar industry that is now Marvel and Avengers and, you know, Black Widow and all that, than people owning their likeness. And of course, I think that people should own their likeness. And the upside that I see to this is it's going to force the advent of technology that can catch people doing bad things and should.
But right now, where we're at right now, most contracts don't even address this issue. And there's nothing, unless if you're dealing with a company that wants to stay in the letter of the law, but is relatively unethical. There is nothing outside of a contract, particularly in most states where you work what they call at will, like in my state. There's no guarantee that one day they own every recording that you made on the air live. They record it, they own it, and they can use it the way they want to. However, that agreement is silent to feeding it into a large language model and, you know, going forward, generating new content theoretically in your voice, your likeness, your method of delivery. And that's the big problem. There is a gap between, you know, work that is not me, but sounds like, acts like, talks like me.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you guys on pretty much every point. This could be used well, but likely it's going to be used to sugarcoat and downplay and just kind of be used as a rip-off tool. Is like, hey, this actor's refusing to come in, this persona is refusing to come in, we'll just literally digitally clone them in here. And since we own, like you say, the license to use that character in their image, and they can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And they've done that with the Flash.
Yeah.
They did that with the Flash because, I mean, for instance, I haven't seen the film yet, but they've apparently put the original Superman actor, George Reeves,
it was amazing.
into the film.
It was the most amazing thing I saw.
But nobody's getting paid for that.
Yeah.
Because
and that's wrong.
Because there's no family.
But
Yeah.
can I just
So-
say that happened years back in Back to the Future 2 with Crispin Glover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he
True.
refused to do the second one, and they put an actor in makeup. Sorry. Oi.
This dog protests.
Sorry. She's deaf as a post, so she just barks at the squirrels and can't hear me. But no, they put someone in Crispin Glover makeup, and he sued them. Actually, was able to sue them because his likeness.
That's good.
And I think this is what I was thinking about today was like, are there any previous before AI style situations? And a lot of it is DC because obviously the other one was Gene Hackman in Superman 2. When Donna got fired, Hackman said, no way. So they go, fine, here's a sound alike, here's a look alike, you know. And it's that if your brand is your face and you're an actor, you know, it's what you know, that's you. They can steal that. They can actually steal your livelihood from you.
Yes.
And that's scary.
And especially, I think my other issue is, let's say there's some off-color content in there, and especially it was used against your will. You know, you as the performer should have the right to say, "Hey, I disagree with that character route or my image being used." You know, just because I left the project. So I think that's just it. Like, there is good intentions behind it, but most of it's going to be used for negative intentions and to save money. So it's like, because of that loophole, I just got to vote nay on it for now, because we can go back and forth all day saying, hey, it is impressive technology, but if it's going to be abused, you know, it's just like with anything NASA, Microsoft, or Apple's come up with, you shouldn't unleash it if there's not a security lock on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go. That's the thing. What the difference is, so the change needs to be where there are things put in place where you get those rights and people get paid accordingly.
Yeah.
And they look into it more rather than being a bit ham-fisted with it. Have some actual regulations there in place, and then there's no problem with it at all.
I think what you end up needing to do is the courts or legislation, and y'all in Europeans would probably have a better chance at this, because it seems like when it comes to technology, the European Union seems to be far ahead of the United States' inability to get there. But anyway, I think what you're going to need is a definition of what is a personal brand. What is a personal brand? Is it your likeness? Is it your voice? Is it your mannerisms? Is it, you know, I mean, because we do podcasts, I do radio. So is it my voice? Is it my personality? And how do you define that if you don't define the whole being? And you have to, because not everybody has the ability to negotiate a contract or have it enforceable as a known content situation. And in radio, people get paid so little anyway that you're not going to have those kinds of protections. Mm-mm.
And I think it's going to be a field day for attorneys.
I take a view from on an individual contract basis. So those few unfortunate people that did get sucked into a bad deal with this AI, I think the industry will actually learn from that. And those unscrupulous operators, I think, again, looking at a long-term view, you'll get less talent coming in to actually work if you don't structure those contracts well, so that they do get either trailing revenue or some sort of compensation, right? And so I think, because we're in the very start of it, and unfortunately, I guess call them trailblazers if you like, may miss out, but the industry and people talk and people learn from each other, will say, all right, make sure if you're signing this contract, make sure you have a clause about likeness and AI and all that sorts of good.
Kind of reminds me of sampling in music, kind of. You can sample, but you gotta use. It's got to be under a minute and be used for parody purposes or something like that.
But I think the piece that we miss is, for a lot of these people, it was a matter of work, a body of work already accomplished being used in the future. The difference with AI is using your essence, however that's defined, to create what could be considered, and it's right now the courts don't consider it new work, but unique work. I won't call it necessarily new, but unique work that was not done by you in the past, but using your likeness, deep machine learning, deep fake technology, and all of this creates this hybrid or synthetic version of you in the future that is doing things or responding in a way that is you, but it's not you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's currently already laws out there that stop, or are supposed to stop passing off, right? I mean, we could do this previously. We could do all this stuff previously. You put a photo of someone, attribute a quote that's wrong to them, and you can through the court system, you can actually get that resolved. Yes, I know it's expensive and all that sort of stuff, but there are laws around that to actually combat things like deepfake, right?
But how you prove it?
So
that's what I'm worried about too.
Versus, I mean, let's give a hypothetical. Let's take this a little further. Let's say they caught you at a bad moment. You said something you probably should have never said or did. Okay, you got it there. Somebody reported it. They reported accurately, but you said, no, that's a deep fake of me. I would never say that. I would never do that. And maybe it's the only time you did. So there's not like a history of you doing stupid stuff. You did it this one time for whatever reason. Now, you're in court because you're suing, and it's a very high bar. So I don't even know how you go there. I mean, back in the day, it was easy. Now it was less.
Can you prove it? Now it's kind of well.
But what if
I
it's
digitally add this to you, and no one will be able to tell if it's CGI or not?
Yeah, they're getting that. They're getting that good.
But what if it's also like, so actually, and this is off Marv's list. You were talking about the intro to Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
Like a few months back, everyone was buying that app where it made them, look like pieces of artwork, and then it emerged that the creators of that app were basically scanning in artists' work to generate these styles, and no one had been compensated. But when it comes to artwork and style, like my face is my face, and I mean my accent to a lot of you probably doesn't sound unique, but I live in Washington DC, so I can tell you my accent is very unique to here. I know,
no doubt.
But when it comes to artwork, how do you define what is your style? It's very hard to prove, well, that style that someone's used for this filter is me. And this is what's so scary, is that if these artists are generating artwork that looks like that, they're so talented, but they're not getting compensation, and then they're therefore not going to move forward. It could stunt their careers, because all of a sudden they're like, well, no one's going to buy my artwork if they can generate it for free online, and then it kills an artist and it kills another great talent. And I think for when you've got actors, it's easy to say, well, that's definitely me, that's definitely my voice, we can maybe move forward with this. But there's a lot of work out there that's really hard to pinpoint and to prove, and that's what's scary for a lot of people. And about to say that there's a stereotype, artists, a lot of times they're starting, don't have that money to run these big court cases to say, hey, that's mine, give me my money back.
Oh yeah, because the big company would just bury them in legal paperwork, and you have no way around that. But I was going to say something that kind of slipped my mind. But don't you? Maybe AI can help us with that. Maybe AI can help us define if it's a person's artwork or not a person's artwork.
Involve the right people asking that.
But then that leads to another issue. If you're going into a court case, then if you query ChatGPT, give them the information. For example, it all gets down to prompts. Those of you that may have used it, it gets down to prompts. Like, for example, if I said in the voice or in the style of Max Sycamore, give me 5 podcast topics that he would talk about. Is that ripping you off or not? And particularly if I can come up with a chat bot that sounds like Max.
Now, jokes on them, it'll get them cancelled. But anyway.
But I mean, that is an issue. That is why SAG is on strike. That is why the Writers Guild is on strike. Together for the first time in 63 years, they're out on strike. And AI is a major part of that. Yeah. Because, you can use it, but now you've got to get AI recognized least legally, that it's sufficient to present in a case against somebody's work or defend somebody's work. You've got to get some guardrails. AI is either the savior or the devil, or both, and someone's going to have to define that some kind of way.
Could
Until internet
people-
bullying goes away, we can't do anything with this really.
Yeah.
Can I
Until we get
ask?
stable feds and new laws.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Can I just ask, like, Graeme, you say you do AI generated podcasting.
Yes.
Could you just explain how that works? I've never heard that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I'll probably go back a bit because my background's in software engineering, and I wanted to do some podcasts, but being a father of 3, didn't have a lot of time. I wanted to make sure that it was consistent, all those good things. So there were, this was maybe 3 years ago, some reasonable AI voices from Amazon Web Services. So I decided to just experiment with that. First of all, I did some, like a basic finance type podcast, and then kind of evolved. And then I decided to try my hand at dad jokes. The AI voice was very deadpan, kind of like the Mitch Hedberg and Stephen Wright type humor. And I thought that sort of lent itself well. So I basically coded up some stuff to make it feel like he was in a comedy lounge, right? Again, just with really lame canned laughter and all that sort of stuff, right? So that was kind of, so it's not really just the AI voice, but it was also algorithms and basic, just normal, just coding to try and get that consistently done. So I was as surprised as anyone that people started listening to it, and then it sort of it took off. So I've extended that to a few other podcasts.
Algorithms.
Yeah. Pardon?
You can't predict the algorithms, really.
Well, I mean that's the thing is, like, you have to define what AI is and what an algorithm is. So for me, AI is kind of non-deterministic. So you can put something in, like a prompt, as what Ken was saying, and then you might get different responses, right? But with an algorithm, generally speaking, input it does something, you have something relatively, consistent, right? You kind of predict it, right? So it's a process like a recipe, but it's just doing it much faster, right? So I think that's how I approached it, is using a combination of both, right?
I think that's the problem too. Faster isn't better though.
Yeah. So I was really just going for consistency, really. Yeah.
But can I ask Graeme, is the joke of your podcast a bit that it is AI doing it?
No. It's not. That's not generative. So I troll Reddit for that, and use that. So the generative side of things are some of the newer podcasts, like the Marv was talking in the pre-show about the daily quiz. So I managed to get a database of quizzes, but what I've done is augmented. So sometimes you see in quiz shows, like, they give you the answer and then they sort of explain a little bit about that topic. So there might be a paragraph afterwards, and that's generative from the ChatGPT API. So so like gives a little bit more context to what the question and answer is. Yeah.
So, gentlemen, show of hands, how many, in addition to Graeme and myself, have actually, even dabbled with AI at all? Anybody else?
Anybody
No.
uses Siri
No, Max?
or Alexa, then they're also versions of AI.
Yeah.
I mean, I use that to play the Barbie soundtrack, but I've not done anything with podcasting.
Why does that not surprise me?
I mean,
it was a good movie, but not for the podcasting. I think my husband, he was doing a laundry one day, and he went on ChatGPT and asked them to generate a song about doing the laundry. But he plays the guitar, so they gave him the notes, and he sang me the song that it generated, and it was really quite beautiful, actually. But no, that's my most I've seen generate with it.
That sounds cool, actually. That would save me
Cam,
time.
nothing at all?
Pardon?
No, I was actually asking Cam. E was the only one that hasn't. I was just curious.
Oh, I was just thinking. I'm pretty much on board with most of your points, but at the end of the day, we're pretty much at the point of if you can't enforce any kind of rules to stop any kind of misconduct, it's kind of just at this point where it's like, well, we can't really enforce this, so we shouldn't use it.
Mm, that
As much fun as we have,
yeah.
if you're going to still end up having to get into I mean, we're already tired of Me Too and everything, and how it's just so hard to tell who's a jerk and who's legit. If it gets down to just, again, continual court battles and residuals, then and people trying to cut corners to do stuff that crazy people won't do for them, then you're ultimately more people are going to get hurt than solve a problem.
Okay.
But maybe there's a value in the struggle. I mean, ethics is the thing that I think is sorely lacking in many professions, and so maybe AI will force us to apply some ethics in that situation that really overall make us better as a species by calling our attention to things that we otherwise wouldn't attend to.
You know, I would love to agree with that, but all I'm going to say is consider our current political system. Full stop.
Yes.
I got nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Regardless of where you are in the spectrum, just consider it for a minute. I mean, these are the people we've elected, and this is what we've got.
Yeah. We need a better pool of people, I think. You know, one of the quotes one of my favorite quotes is, if you elect wolves to lead you, don't be surprised when they come to eat you. And I
Amen.
think that,
Okay.
Well
On that note, then, so we're talking a lot about AI being used to generate likenesses and avatars out against their will. So I don't want to make this political, but as a recording yesterday, the one of our higher politicians had a moment during a press conference where they literally shut down. It's clear that they are going through something. They had a medical episode, so I hope, you know, all their sins. I hope they're well. Not really, but anyway. But how would you feel if it turned out someone was using AI technology to generate a healthy looking avatar of themselves to create to make them get elected? Because quite frankly, you know, there's a lot of politicians. I'm going to be hands up. I'm a Democrat, stroke, you know, liberal Labour person. I'm going to vote in a certain way. But you know, if both parties were using avatars to effectively lie to their constituents and their people to say, "Hey, we're healthy," that's another issue because you know
I'm worried about that too.
Yeah, and that's where you're going to start. That's where it's. Yeah, I said we've looked at it against the will, but wow, if I found out that someone I voted for had basically faked all of their videos because they couldn't string a sentence together, that's a huge concern.
Yeah.
welcome to the world of deepfakes.
Look at, for instance, like there was this classic Tales from the Crypt episode by Rob Zemeckis. They got permission from Humphrey Bogart's estate to digitally add existing footage of him and make it look like he was talking. Then they got a sound alike to interact in that whole scene. And like you say, I mean, they signed off on that and everything, but as Ken was noting earlier, there's now a lot of gray areas where there's a lot of people who don't have an estate to answer to. So now you can throw all that license out the window of asking permission to use their image.
I'll make it a little more difficult. It doesn't necessarily have to be that folks that are already dead. They're doing this to people in real time. You mentioned earlier about sampling back in the day. That was work that was done, used in a different application. I still contend that we're looking at a whole new model where people are taking past information to educate or inform a model that will then predicate, generate, create, in a way, new ways of, you know, projection, voice, everything in that form, in that style in that likeness. That's completely new because in every case
Totally.
we've talked about so far, save for movie actors, it was either they used past work to do some other things, usually with permission. Now we're looking at some nefarious actor in some foreign country scrapes the internet for a likeness, a politician, for example.
Yeah.
And in fact, it happened. A leading politician of one of the parties was actually, I guess it was wishful thinking on this individual's part. Whoever created it showed this individual being arrested, and that was not true.
Yeah.
But yeah, it made, when the bad actors get in, I'm thinking North Korea, China, and God knows who else who has a vendetta against somebody and takes all this stuff and puts it together. My concern is not Chat GPT today. My concern is 1, 2, 3 versions out when it gets almost indistinguishable. And when people decide, because right now, those folks are labeling stuff fake, but there's no law requiring them to do so. They're doing it out of ethics. What
Exactly.
happens when you have an unethical actor that puts it out there into the wild with no identification, no context, no nothing?
And people hear that. I'm sorry. I'll be blunt. My mother-in-law lives in Florida. She comes at me. She'll buzz me and go like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Mum, don't look at that." Just But it's true that and we're we're all we have different opinions on this, but we're all technical people. I'm guessing that we're all the sort of people that look at stuff. My dissertation was on visual effects, so I can look at my husband. It annoys him so much. I'll be like, "That's clearly this. That's clearly that. That's clearly this." I can see through stuff, but some stuff is getting really hard to look at now and go, "I think that's fake." And I hate to think people that are looking for truth in false, they're going to see the truth, and that's so scary.
Absolutely.
But in the history of all technology, there is that sort of thing, isn't there? Where it's, you go through rough patch with technology where it's used for bad in some ways. I mean, look at the atomic bomb, for instance, or where you got that, and then you lead up to creating power, and it's like, whoa, we've got this sort of power, or whatever, and it's how you use that. I mean, I agree with you all that these things are negative, but in a sense, I mean, I'm pulling out something here just out the top of my head here. We're going to a sort of period where AI can also be for the good as well. Because I just thought, well, what about, I mean, Stephen Hawking, for instance, he used a device to be able to speak with.
Yeah.
And that, AI can be good for that sort of thing when you've got people with disabilities that can't speak and they use that for talking. So there's a good side to it. It's just all the negative that's bad, these
Well,
things.
it's just.
Well, I think there's a
until
term
we get
about throwing.
feds,
go ahead, Cam.
until we get people who can actually, enforce this, and stop bullshitting instead of endless court battles. I don't think you're going to see any change, unfortunately. I'm with you all. This should be a progressive change, but unfortunately, have to get people who make sense.
Until you get politicians, because I heard something on National Public Radio this afternoon, and their take is, and what the experts are saying, we don't want to restrict AI right now because it may limit its development. And I'm like, I'm almost yelling at the radio. What about guardrails? What about guardrails? You don't have to. I've got the same problem that I talk about every week when it comes to autonomous vehicles. No, you can right now. There is nothing in the law anywhere, United States or Europe, that says an autonomous car should do this. This should be the minimum specs for it to do, so you can compare apples to apples. I think that AI needs guardrails. It doesn't say nip the technology in the bud. It says, from an ethical and legal standpoint, these are your boundaries. Have fun in the sandbox, but these are your boundaries.
Exactly. It's not pain or pleasure. There's a slap on the wrist. It's like
Mhm.
we're too afraid to moderate. It's just got to be one or the other. I'm like, let's find the middle ground, please.
I agree.
Yeah,
Something.
I take the view, like, I think we're putting too much faith in the politicians to actually write these guardrails properly.
Yeah.
So if you get them to do it, I
Even
mean,
celebrities for that matter.
yeah,
If
they're
you
not
can
going to
make
know about
everything
the
go
technology.
away.
Yeah, they're not going to know about the technology. I don't think anyone actually has in their head the whole gamut of what AI, all of the AI technology that's currently out there
Oh, no,
and
nobody
being
does.
developed. And
No one
for us to expect lawmakers to be able to do that, I just worry that if you put these guardrails out, and I am a little bit more, I guess, permissive of getting companies and individuals to actually work on this stuff to see what can be done, right? And what
Yeah.
the doc said before about the ethics side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ethics to me comes from the individual and having, as I said before, having discussions like this, right? So that people can make up their own minds. Because I don't know about you, what your politicians are like, but my politicians aren't what I'd call the most ethical.
But
What, in England? Stop lying. That's a lie. All English politicians are amazing.
Oh my god.
You know differently, Max. You know differently. That's why you're over there.
But
That's why he's in DC.
No
I've got
politician ever did anything
I've got the worst
wrong.
of both
Yeah.
worlds.
But gentlemen, right now, here's where we're at. Yes, the politicians are clueless. Again, I deal with a lot of mobility technology, and yeah, I could wax for hours about the lack. But bottom line, they do need, even if a government agency like the FTC or somebody says, hey, here's some voluntary guidelines, I could go for that. Where there is a level of expertise in some of these agencies where they have an idea, where they're working with this technology. But if you leave it to business, I'm sorry, it gets down to the dollar.
Yep.
I don't expect business to do right. I just did a piece on, they're screaming now about the EPA's new standards from 2027 to 2032. Oh, we can't meet them. They're dead on arrival. They said the same thing in the 1970s about clean air then, and they met it. In fact, Honda beat them without a catalytic converter. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a whole lot of faith in companies. And added thing, being a man of color, technology usually does us wrong.
Yeah, that is very
Max?
true. There are a lot of, there's so many people who have wrongly gone to prison just because, I mean, think of centuries ago when DNA wasn't properly used. There's been so many cold cases and other injustices. Chicago, most of Chicago's budget pretty much goes to paying off victims of wrongfully imprisoned people. So, like, yeah, until people actually get their head out of their ass, I don't think you're going to see any change.
Yeah,
but do you think AI could actually help? Could AI help in that regard, in terms of justice and law enforcement? If you take away the bias, inherent biases.
One word: ethics.
Yeah.
Give me some ethical people in positions of power, attorney generals, city attorneys, county attorneys, that will look at this thing. Give me some government officials, maybe not politicians, that have experience in this area who can establish guidelines. The National Highway Transportation Safety Administration put out guidelines for the industry relative to security, cybersecurity. They did it starting in 2016 when they were looking at, when there was the big push for autonomous vehicles. There were guidelines. I read them. There was guidelines also by the Society of Automotive Engineers. They weren't law, but they were guidelines, and they were pretty solid. We need something like that now. If a company, if a industry association wants to do something like that in working with the government, and they put out some guidelines, okay, I'm good with that. But again, I'm not saying regulation. I'm saying guardrails, which is not comprehensive. I just want, okay, we're going to define the sandbox, and we're going to give you really wide berth, so that the stuff that's kind of obvious that you shouldn't be doing is what we're saying don't do. But right now, there is nothing, save for the person's or the company or the organization's ethics, that stop them from doing it. and that
Yeah,
scares me sometimes.
We have barriers, but we don't have, like you say, stuff that keeps us safe. So if your
Exactly.
rights are still compromised, the system's still broken. So yeah,
It relies on common sense, and the trouble is that no one uses common
what
sense.
is common sense? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so. I mean, for me, I've said I keep going back to Star Wars is my life, and you look at something like, for me, I look at Rogue One, where you had a whole character who was built on a dead person, and it was Governor Tarkin, Yoda face, and that was
That's
not
a good point. Yeah,
and it was like, well, the actor actually that played him as a body double, he looks like him. He didn't need that makeup. It was really
they should have
easy.
just recasted him instead of asked permission from this state. So
Exactly.
yeah, I do blame movies for popularizing it. That is very much true.
But then you look at the end, and I don't want to spoil Rogue One, but it's been out 5 years now, so let's not go there.
Little past spoiler alert.
But
someone dies.
But the bit where Princess Leia turns around and it's Carrie Fisher's CGI'd face, I know it's a bit like to that reality, but that was a good use of it. That was a real good ending to a film. And then in the last Star Wars, obviously, sadly, Carrie Fisher had passed. They were like, do we use her body? Do we use the footage we've got? And then you find out that her daughter was heavily involved in that when they used a body double, it was the daughter's character that led her off camera to when she passed away and all that. That's a good use of it, because there's this there's a discussion, and it was and that's when I know it's a very unique experience, but it was, Billy Lord saying, hey, can you reuse this so I can say goodbye to my mum? And that's when you have this amazing positive. But no, there's a lot of times where you're like, really, we're going to use this for this? Can we just not use our imaginations and learn that so and so had died?
Well, I like how Ken came back to the ethics part of it. And ethics are guardrails. Ethics are not vested in a single person. They're not vested in a single politician. Ethics are a framework of how we will do things. Take, for instance, IRBs, Institutional Review Boards. Back in the day of the 1950s, as John B. Watson, who was experimenting and doing, terrible things to kids, and all kinds of terrible experiments were going on that would be, of course, unethical and illegal today. That framework did not exist. But now there's so many hoops that have to be jumped through that's not vested in a person. It's vested, I'm trying to get on camera here, it's vested in a framework, or as Ken said, guardrails. And my point is, I think that maybe the advent of AI will help us push ahead developing that framework for AI the same way it did with psychological experimentation in my field, which used to be horrible. Horrible things were done.
Yeah, but that's the problem. For every person who's competent, if someone is still willing to sign off on someone who's doesn't have any good intent and it's still a money-saving avenue, I just fear that you're going to get another Tuskegee or Japanese internment camp, but technology level.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. The flotsam always floats to the surface,
yeah.
It always comes to the surface. I mean, war does the same thing. It brings the worst people to the surface, and they're the ones who wind up leading. But I think that's where we don't depend on our politicians. We have very intelligent guys and gals and people like y'all that can get out there and lead the way, lead the charge, and speak up and have a voice.
I mean, it's kind of like with drones. Great idea. Don't need to have endless people going out and fighting. But at the same time, they struggled with drones at first, just getting ones that had accurate targeting that didn't result in a friendly fire.
Can I ask another question to everyone, really? Because one of the things that's come up is, especially I see on Twitter, is AI generated scripts for your podcast.
Oh yeah.
So me and my co-host Daniel, we have a structure, but we have to fill in Right, our podcast is about culture, so we'll look at what's in the news. We put everything in, but we couldn't generate our script yet. It's weird. It's like what takes our fancy. But does anyone here generate their scripts completely through AI? And do you think that defeats the point of being an indie podcast if you're doing that at all?
I think that speaks to authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that, in my case, I mean, I process a lot of information that I pull from a lot of different sources. I won't, because I'm just eclectic like that in terms of how I want to talk about the field notes that I write, and things that come to me as I'm talking about these different items. No, I wouldn't go there. I have used AI to inform, but that's more on the marketing side when I am reaching out to affiliates. But even then, I use it to inform. I don't use it verbatim. But I will say this: in doing all the research that I do, because AI, at least in print, has a certain voice, if you will, it's becoming relatively evident how many news sources are actually using AI. And what's worse is they're not proofreading it.
That
And
scares
really-
me.
it's really- yeah.
Proofreading scares me.
Yeah, and I've seen it. It's horrific. And you would be surprised at some of the outlets that are using it. I was blown away because AI has certain tells in print, if you know what you're looking for.
Well,
And,
it really amazed me when I was watching. I guess maybe it was the 60 Minutes documentary that AI was asked to come up with, some article about something and to cite references. And what caught my attention was it actually cited references, but it fabricated them. These
Whoa.
research studies did not exist.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
so
the case
pretty much
with,
this goes
Yes,
back
yeah,
to
that was the case with the
Alexa
law. Yeah.
and Siri. I can't rely on any of them, even when I do diction
Oh,
to
no.
text. They're always going to have some blooper.
Yeah.
But I mean, as somebody that reads research and does research, it was just amazing to me. And I think the name is hallucination. You tech guys can
Yep.
tell me, but
Yep.
but really AI did what the chat prompt asked it to do, and it's really very much what. Well, I have discussions with parents all the time. They'll say, "Well, my kid lied to me about brushing their teeth." Well,
Yeah.
not exactly. Not exactly. To a kid's mind who is 6, 7, 8 years old, which is more fun? Actually brushing your teeth or pretending having the fairy tale that you brush their teeth? That's not exactly lying in the adult sense of fabricating information. AI is like that child that is fabricating information to please the parent, and the parent is the person typing the prompt.
Wow.
Man.
Wow. I don't know how you're going to respond to that. I
So
will.
basically, we're seeing it for different lenses, but it ultimately
well,
kind of has. We
let me-
always have
let-
to have a dialogue about it
Yeah.
because it
Let
can't
me
speak
throw.
for itself. Go ahead.
Let me throw this 50 cents in. And I want to come back to something I'd said earlier when I talked about radio GPT. They actually use a human curation firm to edit out the hallucinations and to verify.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Imagine those that don't.
Yeah.
I see that in
Self-control
print a
with
lot.
that.
I see that in print a lot, which is why I, basically use different places to verify certain information and dig a little deeper if it seems a little off.
I thought I would do an experiment with AI. I think I did it with both Bard and Chat. And I said, tell me about this guy. And it fabricated information. It wasn't me. It made stuff
Ooh.
up. It said that I did things that I never did.
Well, we'll find out. We'll find that one out later.
Yeah.
We're going to fact check that one, Dr. Heath.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I went through there and checked it. And I mean, my wife works in employment, and there are people.
I'm sorry.
There are people who.
What's worse, that or HR?
Doctors and nurses and professionals who actually fabricate their credentials.
Oh.
I mean, I know it sounds crazy, But
No,
there's
it's
been
It
not.
sounds scary.
I see this all
Actually,
the same. I mean, we had this with license plate forging and everything, and it was like I think we should give someone a slap on the wrist unless they're a career criminal doing this.
Yeah, I mean,
But
what's the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can? That's based on a real guy
right, right.
that faked being an airline pilot and a doctor and all kinds of things. And one
Yep.
danger AI will be it will make it a lot easier for people to fake their identities
Yep.
as other people.
But he didn't tell that he faked the fakeness. Haven't they basically called him up and said, you did not actually do any of the fake things you said you were going to do? That came out like last month that Frank Whitlow had basically fake life that he said he faked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Well,
They said you can't do any of that.
He claimed that he faked it.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
geez.
Yeah.
Let me take this a little further. Okay, so you maybe you use AI to verify that somebody was using AI, but the question is, will the AI that you use in the command prompts that you give it bring back the fact that they did fake it? Or what will AI do? Oh no, these are legit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm scared. This does not make me feel better, gentlemen.
Calm down, Dave. You're overthinking everything. Have a breath, Dave.
Oh wow.
Sit down, Dave. It's
Oh,
okay. Have another glass of wine, Dave. Everything's going to be okay.
Oh no. I can't do that, Dave. Okay, I got you.
And I hope I guess you listeners that don't know what's going on, I guess this is Space Odyssey, right?
2001, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm going to be blunt. If the latest big blockbuster movie, i.e., Barbie's opening 5 minutes, are a tribute to Space Odyssey, people need to start educating themselves about the underground because the opening 5 minutes of that film is going to go over the heads of a lot of people.
Well, won't be the first time, unfortunately.
Are you saying the movie Barbie will go over the heads of?
Yeah,
everything is bound to just be misinterpreted. But yeah, I'm worried about everything pretty much.
The opening 5 minutes of that film is a shot-for-shot remake of the opening of Space Odyssey. It's brilliant.
Wow.
It's like I just sat there and went, oh, this is so amazing for sci-fi geeks.
Wow.
You've got the obelisk, and then you've got the gorillas and everything as well, have you?
Oh, the obelisk is 50-foot Margot Robbie in a swimsuit.
Oh my.
Yeah.
I think you can find it online. I saw clips of it online. It is.
And isn't it amazing that they're pairing the movies together? You know, of course, it's Barbieheimer. It's some some AI stuff in Barbie with the nuclear weapon developed by Oppenheimer.
Well, they've been doing that with artwork, haven't they? People have been creating artwork that's a merger of the Barbie and Oppenheimer, haven't they?
Yeah, I've done that. I did.
I mean,
a special
given how
episode on
everyone's breaking into anything, it seems like I don't see how we can have any civil resolve really at any part of this. Just because, again, you guys have gone to the mountain and back, and we got so many systematic problems. I mean, we already know it doesn't have an ending, but how does it even start?
So
how does it even begin?
I went to university for film production in the early 2000s, and like we were dealing with early After Effects back then. And now, like when I'll sit there and I'll do something on Photoshop, like we have the Adobe Suite. I know that I'm coming from a place of privilege with that. And it's so funny I'll cut stuff out and I'll make stuff. And if anyone's seen like my podcast, like the graphics that I do, I really, really put a lot into that. But then my husband will sit on his phone and go, I just did this with an app. And I'm like, in the words of Sam Neill, I'm extinct. It's like, well, like, what are we meant to do? Like, and it's so funny that everything that I learned at uni now can be done by downloading an application. And I sound old saying the word application, but you're like, really? And and then someone goes, look what I did. It's like I'm like a dinosaur, and I'm like, "Rah." I'm like, oh my god, you have no idea of the motion tracking that goes into that, and all the algorithms and the face and the movement, and it recognizes your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and I just want to scream at people and go, you have no idea of the technology that you're using.
But that's the same as, in audio. I learnt sound engineering from the old days of reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
Okay, and back in those days, before there were like computers, I worked in there was digital recording at that point, but I learnt in a studio where that hadn't come in yet, because it was like the late 80s and the early 90s. So I'd learnt in that situation. Back in those days, if you needed to snip a bit out of a piece of music or something, you literally get that tape, and a razor blade, and you cut the darn thing exact and then stick it back together.
Yeah.
So then I went away from the industry for a while, came back, and now you've got cut and paste on software. And it's like, well, do you know how many bloody hours I would have saved if that technology was available back then, and I'd have saved some of my skin in the process?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but Marv, a technical problem back in, I was born in the 80s, but a technical problem of your tape was solved with a bloody pencil. You just twirl it in the pencil and put the tape back in the cassette. It was like, and now it's like refactor factory settings. I'm like, no, it's called going like that with a pencil. You put the tape back in and pray.
Yeah. Well, something I've been meaning to touch on, and I'm not sure how long you guys want to stay on, but I'll just kind of sneak it in here, is the human brain is very, very fond of patterns, and we view shifting patterns as a threat to us. Any pattern shift, the brain alerts us that this could be a danger to us. And I think the same thing happened at the event of the Industrial Revolution. I think it happened further back, from moving from hunter-gatherers to farming and that kind of thing. It happened at the advent of the automobile and using tractors instead of horses. It's happened in farming, where one farmer can farm tens of thousands of acres. And I think that it's just adaptation, and so far humans have done okay with it. We're still here, and there's evidently 8 billion of us. But when there's an open loop, we want to close it, because we think that an open loop is a threat to us. And I think AI is that unknown. AI is that open loop, and we're going to respond by one of my favorite words, catastrophization of the new thing, until the new thing becomes the old thing, and we have a new thing now to worry about.
Are you calling us Luddites, sir?
Not all of you. Not all of us.
We know our place.
I will accept Luddite. I'm very proud of being old-fashioned.
You resemble that comment.
I'm thinking, and I'm dating myself. I'm sorry, but I am. I'm thinking of 1972. General Motors attempted to automate their plant, which is now closed.
True Crime podcast. Oh my god!
In Lordstown, and they revolted. And in fact, there was a book written about it, the Lordstown Rebellion. I'm sorry, the Lordstown Rebellion.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's automakers have led the way at trying to automate. And what the companies are proposing now, I just covered it on my podcast. I had a full fit about what Tesla is doing and what Toyota is going to emanate. Here's something that you can chew on. You realize right now that the auto industry regards the best, most modern, most technological manufacturer is not Toyota.
Who is it?
Tesla.
Oh, wow.
And Tesla's taking their lean manufacturing model back to the drawing board in order to deal with Tesla. And I don't like where they're going, because it causes a whole bunch of new problems. Yeah, I just talked about that. That's a podcast I'm getting ready to put out here in the next couple of days.
But do you know about the Dagenham strikes?
I'm sorry?
In the 60s, the seamstresses that made the car chairs,
Mm-hmm.
they went on strike for more money, and even though they were considered insignificant because they weren't just. I'm sorry, I don't mean just in any way, because my grandma made parachutes during World War II as a seamstress, but
nice.
they couldn't make chairs, they couldn't release the cars, and they wanted more money, and they went, we're not going to do this. And this is what everyone's realizing now. And I think if the strike's going on, is that the smallest cog can break the machine.
Oh yeah, that happened to the Chrysler in 1984
Yeah.
when they introduced their minivan. Everybody wanted one. They were forcing their workers mandatory overtime, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, till finally one of their workers got crushed in a stamping press in Twinsburg, Ohio. Chrysler went on strike, shut the whole company down. Yeah, that occasionally happens in the auto industry. About 2 to 3 people die a year in automobile assembly plants. Fun fact.
I do, yeah.
Where is OSHA in all of that?
Bought
Under the
off.
car.
Oh my
Bought
gosh!
off. Here's the nickel tour right quick. There are consequences for the automakers going south. There's consequences for the automakers, including the foreign ones, setting up shop in non-union states. I point to the state of Alabama. I point to a couple of situations. One that made me actually cry because it was so hideous. About this was a supplier plant that was building sub-assemblies for a larger auto assembly plant in the state. These folks were making at the time, and this was considered top wages in the state of Alabama, and I think they were around $12, $13 an hour. They were encouraged to, they had quotas they couldn't meet, and they were pushed to meet them, and they were just ridiculous quotas that they were struggling to meet. They were also encouraged that keep that line running no matter what. And there was this
The
one
do or die
particular
mentality. That's where it gets creepy.
yeah, well, there was this one particular device that actually tack welded the windshield frame to the firewall of the car. That machine jammed. Now you're supposed to lock out, according to OSHA requirements, is that you tag it, you lock it out, it cannot cycle. They were in a hurry. They didn't lock it out. She unstuck the machine, and before she could get out of there, the machine grabbed her and tried to weld her to the car.
Oh my
Yep.
gosh!
She lived 15 minutes while they tried to turn the machine off.
Oh,
OSHA
crap.
didn't even slap their hands, and
Oh
it's
my
full of that
gosh.
stuff. That's the one that made me cry.
Oh my gosh!
She was she was 21 years old. She was 2 weeks from getting married.
Oh my gosh!
So I'll spare you about the folks that fell in the vat of certain acids. I won't even go there.
Yeah,
amputation.
happens in
Yeah.
manufacturing through the U.S. All the time. Steel factories are huge death traps. I know some of our gang is going to have to head out in a moment for. Well, speaking of family things, and that's okay. So, how about some final thoughts? And shall we wrap up?
Sure.
Cool. Yep.
Should we go around the table?
I'm sorry.
Do the round
Okay, so-
table.
Okay.
Should we go
Hey,
around the table?
let's start with Max and finish up with Ken.
Oh,
Fair
crap,
enough.
me first. No, personally, I am, as someone that works in the visual effects industry, I think that AI has come in useful, but regulation is necessary. And I stand with the writers and I stand with the actors that are striking now. And I hope that we can find a way that benefits both parties, that we can use this, but at the same time, people are compensated for their artistic work. If that's a middle ground, I apologize, but I think there's great things for both. But can we make sure that the creatives are actually compensated, can live their lives, and just inspire new generations of fantastic artwork? Because I hate to see like our next generation just do nothing because someone else is doing their work for them.
And how can folks get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you, Max?
Oh, if they want to get in touch, I can never remember. I'm gonna get on Twitter now, and I apologize if anyone. But we are bitches. We are the bitches with beards, and I adore.
Which you can find everywhere that you find your local neighborhood podcast.
Yes, and we are Bitchy Beard Pod on Twitter. If you want to say hi to me, please do. I usually respond. But no, love everyone, and we're just here to have our opinions. But please let us know about culture, especially Barbie.
I know Graham's got to get out here, so let's go to Graham next.
Yeah.
Graeme.
Yeah, I think final thoughts. I'm broadly bullish on this AI trend, and we just have to keep focused on. We talked a lot about ethics, and I think that ethics can come from the individuals out into the marketplace. And obviously, you guys have a good platform with your podcast, so keep espousing. Having to think of ethics around the use of AI. Otherwise, I got to drop my kids off to school now.
As you well should. Be a good dad.
Yeah.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank you for joining, Graham. We're going to go
Thanks.
to Cam
Thanks, everyone.
next. And by the way, Cam is not at TechMobility. That is Ken, and that is my fault because I did the frames wrong, but we'll let you know how to get in touch with these wonderful guys. What's your final thoughts, Cam?
I think you've all pretty much stamped your foot down, and we see the pros, but we see a lot of growing negativity, and there's just pretty much where these strikes go will pretty much determine what happens next. You can find Jacked Up Review Show on all the platforms, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, and we've talked about all kinds of social topics as well as all kinds of pop culture, and much like this platform, there's room for everyone.
And let's go to Marv. Marv, I don't have a frame for you. You have to speak way down from in the corner. Or not Marv. Not Marv. This is actually introduce yourself and tell us where folks can get in touch with you.
Yep, I am Marv. I'm just my real name is Martin Quibell, but people call me
Oh,
Marv.
you are Marv.
I am Marv. I
So that you were Marv. No, I'm just
I thought you were I thought you were an
I'm
AI
the real
deep fake.
Marv.
Oh no! That's
Not the
scary.
real
been
Slim
talking
Shady.
to a
I'm the
computer
real
this whole
Marv.
time.
And this
yep.
is Marv's show actually. Pods Like Us, he does a wonderful job. And
Are you
the
sure
first
about-
podcast, you guys
Yeah.
give a
Thank
shout
you,
out to
guys.
Marv. Listen to his podcast, say something nice,
Send it up,
leave a
Marv.
good review.
Thank you.
And let's
guys.
you've heard enough from me, so let's wrap up with Ken.
Okay. Well, as the man said, TechMobility at TechMobility Pod on Twitter, the TechMobility Show everywhere else. If you're looking for our podcast and pretty much any podcast platform, the TechMobility Show and TechMobility Topics. And I throw this in. If you want to have a little longer conversation, you can email me, ken@techmobility.show.
It sounds like a fabulous podcast. I'm excited to take a listen. Maybe not for the horror stories, but for the other stuff.
Well,
And
thank
I'm
you
Dr.
for having
Heath,
us,
and I do
guys.
the TherapyBites Art Lab podcast. We take a bite out of psychological concepts and try to tell you some great advice for living, well, just simple, healthy, hopefully ethical lives. And we're just so glad you guys joined us. Anybody else want to say something before we get out of here? This will be available in the replays. We're going to give a copy of it to all of our guests. It's not actually my show. It's Marv's show at Pause Like Us. I'm just kind of playing the graphics host here. But these guys are going to chop it up, share it out, put it on their
Vote
platforms.
MXC. Don't get eliminated.
Yeah. All I'm going to say is, when it comes to AI, guardrails. That's my
Guardrails, baby.
Guardrails.
Yeah.
Great last
Go
words.
to-
Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank
you.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah,
Go
yes,
to
sir.
bed. Go to bed, the English people.
Wow.
I'm on
All right, I'm going to end the show, and we'll have just a couple minutes after we let the audience go to their respective, beds or jobs or whatever we got to get to. Thanks, audience.
Bye.